Hello, friends, and welcome back to High Vibe Table Talks. Blech. Hello, friends, and welcome back to High Vibe Table Talks. This is your host, Rashawn Hargrave, and today we are continuing with the series around big companies that failed and what us as entrepreneurs can learn from them. Last time I did. Last episode in the series, I did one that was Rochester based about the company Kodak and how they had a huge downfall, even though they invented digital cameras, and why that ended in failure. They went from 143,000 employees internationally to just under 20,000. I think it was 16,000 the last time it was reported. And this is another one that's going to be close to my heart because I just have so many experiences with it. And this is going to be how Blockbuster didn't innovate, didn't pivot, and we went from Blockbuster and Hang to Netflix and chill in somewhat of a relatively small time. You know, Kodak was first invented or first came about in like the early 1900s, and it was a large company for decades and decades. Whereas like Blockbuster had its peak moments, I think, in the early 2000s, and Netflix sort of launched. Netflix was founded in 1997, but really like started to have serious momentum in like the 2007, 2008 ish. But why this is like really personal for me is that was a space that me and my family spent a lot of time. Like my dad, we weren't allowed to play. We had an Xbox, and we weren't allowed to play the Xbox during the week, but we could play like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but under, specific time frames. But my dad would leave Bausch come home and pick up James Bond 007, like GoldenEye, I think it was the game that he would pick up. And me and my family, he'd get Chinese, and we would do what we called a picnic night, where we would put a blanket out, eat Chinese food, and we would play the Xbox game. Or he would, that was one that happened often, but he would always be picking up things from movies from Blockbuster for us to watch. And we got to just spend a lot of quality time hanging out as a family, watching a movie from Blockbuster. And like each of us would get to go, and like it'd be our turn to pick out the movie from Blockbuster, and then when I started driving, that's where me and my friends, my one friend Sarah and I spent hours and hours in Blockbuster. And that just would be like our space to hang on a Friday or Saturday night. And then we'd get a scary movie a lot of times and go back to one of our houses, make popcorn, hang out. And so it just was a very like big piece of my memories as a child growing up, And then when I was a junior in college was the first time that we had a house, me and my roommates, and I got a Netflix account. And us as roommates would always talk like, okay, what 3 DVDs do we want to take out from Netflix for this time? And the we would all pick, and then the bag would come with the next Netflix DVDs, and we'd get excited and we watch them, and then send it back and pick our next 3. And it was, sort of the same experience as far as like us coming together being like, what do we want to watch? And then excitedly getting the DVDs. But it just was a lot more convenient because instead of going up there, they are delivered to your front door. And as we all know now, that is not a model that is pertinent at all. Like, I was talking with a friend over the weekend, and she does not have like cable at all. They are only purely streaming services. And so it's just really interesting how Netflix, I feel like, was the tipping point that turned us into only using streaming services. I know so many, my parents don't have cable. They only use streaming services for all of their needs. We still have Spectrum, but so many people rely purely on streaming services. And so not only did Netflix change that experience that Blockbuster had done such a good job of creating, it updated it, improved it. It said it was always like on the cusp of innovation. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about kind of the history of Blockbuster and Netflix, kind of what shifted for them. And then, as we did previously, we're going to end with what can I, as a small business and entrepreneur, learn from that. So in the 90s and early 2000s, Blockbuster was everything. They were everywhere. They were a household name. Like if you see even just that blue and yellow, you're going to recognize that as the Blockbuster logo. It's like one of those stores that you would like drive by and just peripherally you knew what it was and what it meant. It was a place where you went on Friday night to grab originally a VHS, then into a DVD. They did have their late fees. My dad was actually very good friends with the general manager who worked there because we had so many late fees. But it was just like everybody knew Blockbuster and had their memories with Blockbuster. It did have over 9,000 stores at its peak. And I believe, let me look that up real quick. As my dog has an itch. Okay. And there's actually only one Blockbuster left. There is the last Blockbuster in the world. It became the last Blockbuster in the world of March of 2019, and it is in Bend, Oregon. And it's actually like a more of like a historical site that tourists go to visit. It's a franchise location, not a corporate owned store, which is why it's still allowed to be open. And most people probably don't go there for the actual DVDs. They go there for the nostalgia. Can I help you? Netflix was founded in 1997, initially as a DVD rental by mail service, but it was built on convenience. There were no late fees. You could personalize it. And it just was a very different model. Again, it created more convenience than driving up to Blockbuster. And actually, in 2000, Netflix co-founder Reed Hastings approached Blockbuster with an offer to sell Netflix for $50 million to Blockbuster. And Blockbuster laughed them out of the room. And that, I think, is such an interesting, like, sliding doors moment. I think about that movie of, like, what would have happened if Blockbuster had said yes. And now we're in this time when Blockbuster said no. And, like, the world just looks so different. And so, what did Blockbuster have that Netflix did better? And so the big thing is consumer behavior. And so people wanted to watch. I'm very much like a mood reader or a mood watcher. Like, what am I in the mood to watch right now as I'm sitting down in front of my computer or my TV? You get home from a day at work and you just want to put your feet up, have a drink, and what do I want to watch in this moment? Not like, oh, I should go up and like, what am I going to want to watch tomorrow? Or like, there's just is different behavior now that we, as a society, for good, bad, or indifferent, are so much more about convenience. And if a company can take away friction, can take create more convenience, then the consumer is going to choose that. And that's what Netflix did. I didn't realize this, but one of Blockbuster's biggest revenue streams were late fees. And so, that can be a frustration. And if they're is a company that is going to, again, take that away, take a frustration, say, hey, no late fees with us, return it when you want to return it. I'm going to pick that all day, every day, as someone who struggles with late fees and getting things back on time. And if that's a huge part of your business model and how you're going to make money, and then this other company doesn't have that, and so either you have to get rid of it or the consumer is going to choose the other product, that is going to make a huge difference on your business and your business model. And so again, like, what are customers attracted to? Some people are still going to be like, no, I want to go and like have that in-person experience, but I'm not going to have late fees, then, maybe it's not really worth it. And, then the next pivot was the digital transformation. So Netflix at some point really saw streaming as the future and on demand. Blockbuster at one point did launch a digital service, but at that point it was too late. Netflix was the biggest player in that space and had put all of its resources into the streaming services. And that's what there is a reason why there is a saying, Netflix and chill. Like, when you can have that sort of tagline and that sort of impact on consumers at large, like, you're doing something right. And so in 2010, Blockbuster actually filed for bankruptcy. And so, as I said, with my last episode with Kodak, it was more decades in the making. The first digital camera, I think, was created in 1975. And Kodak didn't really feel the impact until the early 2000s. But, this was a relatively shorter amount of time. It was more like they were very dominant for 12 to 15 years and then saw that drop off in like 2006, 7, 8. And by 2010, they filed for bankruptcy. And I think that is more and more the time that we are in. Like, people are very willing to put their money where they care about things and where there is convenience. Just look at the rise of Amazon. Like, Amazon cares deeply about the customer experience and how can we make it easier for the customer to have a positive experience. And so that includes like Prime and something being there within 48 hours. Like, do I want to run to the store and get it if I need it this weekend? Or do I just want to click 2 buttons on my phone? It'll be delivered to my doorstep and I don't have to get on my PJs. Like, again, for good, bad, or indifferent, like, that is the behavior that the consumer wants to experience. And so how do we create a better customer experience? There's a lot less, I feel like, brand loyalty if the customer experience is not great. So most people who listen to this podcast, they are small business owners, entrepreneurs. And so what can we take from understanding this, that, that experience that Blockbuster had, that us as a society had with Blockbuster and its downfall, and how can we make sure that that doesn't happen to us? It's not like, oh, you're this Fortune 500 company and this startup asked you to buy them for $50 million and you said no. Nobody listening to this podcast is going through that as an experience. And so, one of the lessons as I was doing research was like, don't dismiss the little guy. And it's like, no one here is dismissing the little guy. But what we can take from it is listen to your customers, listen to the end experience. Don't listen to your ego. Again, that was another through line from the Kodak episode, is your customers and society at large were saying, hey, we're shifting over here. Everyone's going to have a camera in their hand, in their pocket in the next, 25 years. So your I know the end product is film, or the end product is a VHS, the end product is a DVD, but can you focus on the experience? What experience are you creating? And then how do you make sure that that transfers to the future? If there are issues with customer service, if people are frustrated, if in discussing things with your customer, they're like, yeah, I really like this, or this part of it is really special to me. Like, really dig into what the customer is, what is important to them. And Blockbuster really ignored those signs of, the late fees and the efficiency of, um, being able to just pick, on Monday, oh, I'm going to have these three because we're going to watch. We'll be able to pick one for the weekend or whatever, and then adapting into streaming services. So literally, like, whatever you want to watch at the drop of a hat. And I'm sure Netflix had to put millions and millions of dollars into creating that infrastructure, but they heard their customer and said, this is what they're looking for. And so we're going to move into that way. One thing when people are coming up with businesses, they're like, oh, well, I want to do X. Let's say I want to, what are some, I want to be a VA, or I want to create dog treats, or I want to, I feel really called to create this business, but look at all these other people out there. Can you not? Hey, you stop. There's so many other people out there who are doing it. And I have two things I say when people come to me and use that as an excuse to stop working. And the first thing is that the industry is not saturated. Okay. The first thing I will say is, if there's a lot of people out there doing it, that shows that there is a demand for what you have to offer. If there are more people creating businesses around this thing, that means that there are people who want this thing. And so that's a good sign. Like, if you create this thing and nobody else does it, nobody else has a business that is your direct competitor, are you the first person to ever come up with that idea and people just don't know they want it yet? And A, that's going to be a much harder sell. But B, maybe someone else did create that company and there just wasn't the market that they thought for it. So I'm nobody to like shoot down an idea, but if you do come and say, hey, there's all these other people who do this thing, I can't do it better than them, or like the market's already too saturated. Like, no, that's showing you there is a market for what you have to offer. And secondly, like, some people are Honda drivers and some people are Lamborghini drivers, and some people want to buy from someone who's very like militant and very like in your face, and some people want to buy something different. And like, what you have to offer in your way, there are people out there who will buy from you versus the other person. I did have someone who joined my mastermind one time, and she was we'd get there on Friday and she wouldn't have like finished her things, and she was like, I wanted you to be like in my face and be like, why didn't you do what you said you were going to do? And like, that's not my personality, and it definitely wasn't like the vibe of the group. But that's what she needed, which is fine for her. Again, there are accountability groups, masterminds, things like that out there that have that tone, and it just was not me. You? Hey, stop it. Clyde. Are you chewing on the blanket? Or are you chewing on the tag? Yeah, wackadoo. And so the next lesson is like, don't be afraid to pivot your model, because again, like, even if they like the what that Netflix is now serving isn't that different than the end product that Blockbuster was serving. The end product, the experience that the customer had from Blockbuster is a family at home watching a movie or a show or playing a video game together. And that's not that different than what Netflix has right now. Like Netflix and chill is um, let's go hang at home and experience, like, instead of going out to a movie together, like, let's do it in the space of our living room. And so again, the end product, but the how the customer gets there is so different now, and Netflix was able to capitalize on it. So if you're feeling like your customers, there's friction in how they get to the end product, or they're starting to pull away, or the model in which they receive that end goal is different, don't be afraid to pivot. Like, a lot of my mastermind clients were like, I really enjoy it, but I'm so new in the business space that I'm not bringing in enough money to pay for the mastermind. And so it's like, okay, so now I need to shift a little bit and say, how can I focus on helping you sell to bring in more money so that you can participate in the groups like a mastermind? The experience of my community, I was like, oh, this community is going to be great. They're going to show up, and it's going to be all these people from all these different places in business, and they're going to be sharing ideas. And it just, again, the end result just wasn't the experience I wanted my customers to have. So I had to pivot. So look at what your customers are experiencing and see, is there a space that you could pivot something? Especially if you start to get like churn. So churn is like when customers come and they end up leaving. There's all businesses have natural churn. Some businesses, the churn is higher than others. But if you are starting to have churn, can you look at the experience that your customer is having within your product and or service and say, how can I make this decrease the amount of churn? Is it something that's going on in my model? Is it something that with my customer service? Is the algorithm? Is there a change in how society at large experiences something? And so really being able to step back again, not through the lens of your ego, and just say, I need to pivot this way. Can you climb? Hey. Stop. And so to wrap up this episode, I want to, kind of touch base on another podcast that I listen to very frequently. And this just kind of reminded me, this going through this deep dive of Blockbuster Netflix reminded me of his most recent podcast episode. His podcast was called Grow the Show, and he moved, really rebranded and changed into Chief Audience Officer. And he is talking now about how to create an audience. And so Grow the Show was very beneficial for him initially and benefited a lot of podcasters. But as someone who's in the podcasting space, I know that it is a quickly evolving. There's a lot of people who start a podcast. They, record and put out anywhere between 5 and 10 episodes, and then they quit. And so a lot of his audience was kind of like in there for 6 months, and then they've either outgrown needing to grow their show or they have stopped altogether. And so he really decided to pivot because he cares so deeply about the mission. And so that's kind of what this reminds me of, is like, if you fall in love with your business model or how you're doing things right now, you're going to be oblivious to your mission and when things do need to pivot, when you have to take a look again, not through the lens of your ego. As small businesses and as entrepreneurs, we have an edge. We have agility. We can pivot. We're not pivoting the Titanic or pivoting a speedboat. And so you're also like not very far away from the customer experience. You can talk to them about it. You can ask them about it. If you're building a brand that has those open lines of communication, use them. And so, if you can, ask yourself a couple of things. It doesn't have to be like right now, but just maybe this is more of like a quarterly review or something that you think about on quarterly or annual basis. Where may you be stuck in your old ways of doing things? What are ways that there is friction as your customers are experiencing your product or service? And then could you start to create small experiments to help yourself evolve to change some of those things? I would love to hear if you have any nostalgic memories with Blockbuster or Netflix. But that was really fun. And until next time, remember that big dreams and small steps can transform your life.